My wife cheated on me for 6 months with her coworker. When I confronted her with photo evidence, she broke down. But I'd already hired the divorce lawyer, and what I did next left them speechless. I'm 34 years old, work in tech consulting, and what happened a few months ago still has me processing everything, to be honest. I was married for almost 10 years to Katherine, and I thought we had something solid. You know, one of those relationships where you're not perfect, but you're comfortable, you trust the other person, you build a life together. I guess I should have paid more attention to the signs, but when you're inside something, it's hard to see what's right in front of you. I met Katherine when we were like 24 years old, at a party thrown by a mutual friend. She worked in human resources for a logistics company. I was just starting my career, and we connected pretty quickly. It wasn't love at first sight or any of that movie stuff, but we got along well, we laughed at the same things, we had similar plans for the future. We got married after dating for like 3 years, bought a house in the suburbs, you know those suburban houses with a small yard and neighbors who wave when they take out the trash. It was a normal, quiet life. I traveled quite a bit for work, she had her office hours, and on weekends we did things together, watched shows, went out to dinner, visited her family or mine. Nothing extraordinary, but we were good, or so I thought. Last year things started to change a little, but in that subtle way where you don't realize until it's too late. Katherine got a promotion at work, which was great. She was super excited, and I was happy for her because she deserved it. She'd been working hard at that company for years. But with the promotion came more responsibilities, more hours at the office, more projects, more meetings. She started coming home late, like 8 or 9 at night when she used to leave at 6, and on weekends sometimes she had to check emails or finish presentations. I understood it. I mean, my job was demanding too. I also traveled 2 or 3 times a month, so it didn't seem weird that she was busier. Truth is, I didn't even question it much at first. But there were little things that started to add up, you know? Like, when I came back from a trip, she was more distant, less interested in talking about my week or telling me about hers. Or when we were watching TV together, she was glued to her phone, writing messages and smiling in that way that, I don't know, it was different. When I asked her what was so funny, she'd say nothing, just work stuff, memes they were sharing in the office WhatsApp group. And I believed her because, why wouldn't I? We'd been together for almost 10 years. I'd never had reasons to doubt her. What changed everything was a work trip that got canceled at the last moment. I was supposed to go to Atlanta for 3 days in March, but the client postponed the main meeting with only 1 day's notice, so basically we did everything by video call and I stayed home. Katherine had already left for work when I got the cancellation notification, like 9 inches the morning, and I decided I was going to take advantage of the day off to do things I had pending. Maybe surprise her with dinner or something. I left the house around noon to go to the bank and the hardware store because I needed some things to fix a garage door that was kind of broken, and when I was on the main highway I saw her car. A gray 2018 Honda Civic, with a sticker from her university on the back window, unmistakable. It was parked in the parking lot of an Italian restaurant that was like 20 minutes from her office, which seemed weird to me because she never went to that place for lunch. It was too far. I didn't give it much thought at that moment. I figured maybe she had a work meeting there or something, but something made me feel uncomfortable. I can't explain it well. It was like a feeling in my stomach, you know, that intuition that tells you something doesn't add up. I continued with my errands, and around 1 inch the afternoon, I decided to call her, like casually, to see how her day was going. She answered after like 4 rings and sounded kind of agitated, and when I asked her what she was doing, she told me she was at her desk, working on some reports. I asked her if she'd had lunch, and she said no, that she'd probably order something later because she was really busy. That's when the uncomfortable feeling turned into suspicion, because I had literally seen her car far from the office less than an hour ago. I didn't say anything. I just told her okay, not to kill herself working, and hung up. I sat in my car in the hardware store parking lot, thinking about whether I should go back to that restaurant to see if her car was still there. But I felt ridiculous. What was I going to do? Spy on her? Confront her for being at a restaurant? Maybe she did have a meeting there and had already gone back to the office. I tried to convince myself I was being paranoid, that work stress was making me imagine things. But I couldn't get it out of my head. That night, Katherine came home around 8:30, which was normal lately, and acted completely normal. She asked me how it went with the trip cancellation, if I'd taken advantage of the day off, and I told her about the errands and the garage door I fixed. I asked her how her day had been, and she said super busy, that she'd barely had time for lunch, that she'd eaten a sandwich at her desk while working on a presentation. Lie. Direct, clear lie. And she said it so naturally, without hesitating, without any sign that she was making something up. That's when I really started to worry. The next few days, I was more attentive to everything. I didn't want to be that kind of person who checks their partner's phone or starts making drama without evidence, but something was definitely going on. Katherine had become more careful with her cell phone. She took it to the bathroom with her, put it face down when she left it on the table, and if a notification sounded, she grabbed it immediately and checked the screen with that speed that shows she's expecting something specific. Her schedule kept being erratic. Some days she'd arrive at 7, others at 10, and she always had perfect explanations about urgent projects or meetings that ran long. A week after the restaurant incident, I decided to do something I never thought I'd do. Katherine told me she was going to work late, like 9 or 10, because they had an important presentation the next day. I told her, okay, not to worry, that I was going to order some dinner and watch a movie. She left around 8 inches the morning, normal, and I stayed working from home that day. Around 6 inches the evening, I drove to her office, which was in one of those corporate buildings with a big parking lot. Her car wasn't there. I went through the entire parking lot twice to be sure. Nothing. I stayed in my car for like half an hour, waiting, thinking maybe she'd gone out to buy something or was in a meeting at another building, but she didn't show up. I decided to drive around the area, aimlessly at first. And then I remembered that Italian restaurant where I'd seen her car before. I went there, feeling like I was doing something terrible, but at the same time needing to know the truth. Her car wasn't at the restaurant. I kept driving, checking nearby shopping centers, other restaurants, any place where she might be. Nothing. I went back home around 8:30, confused and frustrated. Katherine arrived at 10:15 that night, looked tired, and told me the presentation had turned out perfect, but they were all exhausted. I asked her who she'd been working with, and she mentioned 2 people from her team, names I knew because I'd heard about them before. Nothing out of the ordinary, but I knew something didn't add up. If she wasn't at her office, where was she? In the next few days, I was basically living in a constant state of anxiety. I couldn't concentrate on work, I wasn't sleeping well, and every time Katherine grabbed her phone, I felt that stab in my stomach. I thought about confronting her, directly, but I didn't have concrete proof of anything, just suspicions and that incident of seeing her lie about her location. I thought about hiring a private investigator, but it seemed like too much, like something they do in movies, not in real life. In the end, I decided I was going to find out on my own what was going on. On Tuesday of the following week, I told Katherine I had to go visit a client in Charlotte and that I'd be gone until Thursday. She said, okay, have a good trip, and gave me a kiss on the cheek when I left. But I didn't go anywhere. I stayed at a hotel like 30 minutes from the house and waited. That night, Katherine got home early, around 7, which surprised me because I thought if I wasn't there, maybe she'd take advantage to, I don't know, do whatever it was she was doing. But no. She came home early. Wednesday was different. I followed her car from the morning, keeping a good distance so she wouldn't see me. She went straight to her office, entered the building, and I thought it was going to be another normal work day. I parked at a cafe nearby and waited. Around 4 inches the afternoon, her car left the parking lot. I followed her. She didn't go toward our house, didn't go to any supermarket or restaurant. She drove toward a residential neighborhood I didn't know, like 25 minutes from her office, and parked in front of a 2-story house. Nice, with a well-kept yard. She stayed in the car for like 5 minutes, checking her phone, and then got out. She walked to the front door and rang the doorbell. A guy opened the door. Tall, like 40 years old, dark hair, dressed casually in jeans and a shirt. They smiled at each other. He stepped aside, and she went in. The door closed. I stayed there, sitting in my car, like 2 houses down, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. I couldn't breathe well. My hands were shaking. Who was this guy? What was Katherine doing there? I took out my phone and took pictures of her car, of the house, of everything. I didn't know what else to do. I waited. 1 hour, 2 hours, nothing. Her car was still there. It was already 6:30 inches the evening. Finally, around 7:15, the house door opened and Katherine came out. The guy came out behind her, put a hand on her waist, leaned in, and kissed her. It wasn't a casual friend kiss. It was a couple's kiss. Long, intimate. Then she got in her car and left. I stayed there another 10 minutes, paralyzed, processing what I'd just seen. Then I drove to the hotel, locked myself in the room, and I think I didn't even cry at first. I was too much in shock. I just sat on the bed, looking at the photos on my phone, trying to understand how this had happened, when it had started. Why? We'd been together for almost 10 years. We had a house. We had plans. Had it all been a lie? How long had this been going on? The next day, I went back to the guy's house early in the morning. I needed to know who he was. I wrote down the address and searched on Google Maps, then looked up the property registry of the house on a county website. The owner was Gregory Martinson. I searched that name on Facebook, LinkedIn, all the social media I could think of. I found him. He worked at the same company as Katherine. On his LinkedIn profile, it said he was operations manager. He'd been at the company for like 3 years. 3 years? Katherine had been working with this guy for 3 years and had never mentioned him? Or wait, yes, she had mentioned him. I was almost sure I'd heard that name before. Gregory. But always in work context. Like, Gregory said the project is going well, or I have a meeting with Gregory tomorrow. Never as someone important, never as someone she spent time with outside the office. I spent the rest of that week confirming the pattern. Katherine went to Gregory's house 3 times that week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Each time she stayed like 2 or 3 hours. Friday she didn't go. Came home early and acted super affectionate with me, asking me how the trip to Charlotte had been, if I'd closed the deal with the client. I played along. I told her a made-up story about meetings and presentations. She believed me, or at least pretended to believe me, just like I'd been pretending I didn't know anything. Saturday morning, I woke up and saw her sleeping next to me, and I felt nothing. Or rather, I felt rage, sadness, confusion, all together, but also like I was looking at a stranger. This person I'd shared almost 10 years of my life with, who I'd planned a future with, who I thought I was going to grow old with, was basically a liar. And she'd done it so well, so naturally, that if I hadn't come back early that day and seen her car at that restaurant, I probably still wouldn't know anything. That day, I decided I was going to confront her. There was no point in continuing to pretend, no point in waiting to have more evidence or for her to decide to confess on her own, because clearly that wasn't going to happen. I waited until Sunday night. She was in the living room watching her favorite show, one of those baking competition reality shows, and I sat next to her with my phone in my hand. I said, "Katherine, we need to talk." She looked at me and paused the show and said, "Okay, what's up?" She looked worried, but not scared, not like someone who knows they're about to be discovered. I said, "Who's Gregory?" And that's when everything changed. Her face went pale, completely pale, and she opened her mouth but no sound came out at first. Then she said, "Gregory? He's a coworker, why?" Her voice was shaky. I showed her the photos on my phone. Her car parked in front of Gregory's house, her coming out of the house, the kiss, the date and time on each photo. Katherine started crying immediately, like those cries where you can't even talk because you're sobbing too hard. She covered her face with her hands and started saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," over and over. I sat there, waiting for her to calm down a bit. And when she could finally speak between the sobs, she told me it had been a mistake, that she didn't know how it had happened, that she loved me, that Gregory meant nothing. I asked her how long they'd been having the affair, and at first she didn't want to tell me. Kept repeating that she was sorry, that we could get through it, that she was going to end everything with him. I told her I needed the truth, Everything, now. She finally admitted they'd been together for like 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of lies. I asked her how it had started, and she told me this story about how Gregory and her had been working together on an important project, that they'd spent a lot of time alone in meetings and work trips, that one night after a corporate dinner, they'd ended up at a bar and things just happened. She said, at first she felt terrible, that she tried to end it several times, but Gregory was persistent, that he told her things I supposedly didn't tell her anymore, that he made her feel special. All the classic cheater speech, you know? The excuses, the justifications, putting part of the blame on the other person. She tried to say that I had also been distant because of my work, that I spent a lot of time traveling, that she'd felt lonely. And yeah, maybe I had been traveling more. Maybe I hadn't been the most attentive husband in the world, but that didn't justify what she'd done. If she had problems in our marriage, she should have talked to me, not gone to bed with her coworker. I told her this was over, that the marriage was over. She panicked, started begging, saying we could go to therapy, that she'd do whatever it took to fix it, that she loved me, that she'd made a terrible mistake but we could still save it. I told her no, that there was nothing to save, that trust was completely broken and that I wasn't going to live the rest of my life wondering if she was with Gregory every time she came home late from work or traveled. I stood up, went to the bedroom, started packing some things in a suitcase. She followed me, still crying, grabbing my arm, asking me to stay, to at least think about it, not to make a decision in the heat of the moment. But I wasn't making a decision in the heat of the moment. I'd spent over a week processing this, knowing what she'd done, mentally preparing myself for this moment. I told her I was going to stay at Maxwell's house, a friend of mine from work, and that I was going to come back in a few days with more people to pack the rest of my stuff. I told her not to try to contact me, that I needed space. I finished packing, grabbed my suitcase, and left the house. She stood there at the door, crying, and it was the last time I saw her in person for weeks. Maxwell received me without asking many questions. I told him the basics and he said I could stay as long as I needed. The next few days were weird. I felt disconnected from everything, like functioning on autopilot. I went to work, did my meetings, went back to Maxwell's house, and tried not to think too much. Katherine tried to call me like 50 times the first day after I left. I sent her a message telling her to stop calling, that when I was ready to talk, I'd contact her. She didn't respond. Long messages saying how sorry she was, how much she missed me, asking if we could just talk for 5 minutes. I blocked her on WhatsApp, on text messages, on all social media. Then she started using other people to get to me. Her sister Olivia called me, asking me to reconsider, that Katherine was devastated, that everyone makes mistakes. My own mother called me because Katherine had contacted her crying. Some mutual friends wrote to me saying they'd talked to her and that maybe I should give her a chance to explain herself better. It was exhausting. I told everyone the same thing, that I appreciated their concern, but my decision was made, that I wasn't going to change my mind. Like 2 weeks after I left, I hired a divorce lawyer. It was surreal to sit in that office and explain the situation, show him the photos, start the process of dissolving a nearly 10-year marriage. The lawyer told me the process could take several months, that we had to divide properties, that the house would probably have to be sold. It was tons of paperwork. Many decisions about material things that at that moment seemed completely irrelevant to me. Who cared who kept the couch or the kitchen dishes? The legal process moved surprisingly fast because Katherine didn't fight anything. Her lawyer contacted mine saying she agreed to an equal division of everything, that she just wanted the process to end as quickly as possible. I guess she felt guilty. Or maybe Gregory had promised her a future together and she didn't care about keeping me anymore. I don't know, honestly. And eventually I stopped caring. Over the following months, I focused on rebuilding my life. I went back to doing things I'd stopped doing, like going to the gym regularly, going out with my friends without feeling guilty about not being home, picking up old hobbies. I realized how much of my identity had been tied to being Katherine's husband, to our life together, and now I had to rediscover who I was, alone. It was hard. I'm not going to lie. There were nights where I felt extremely lonely, where I wondered if I'd made the right decision, if I should have given her a chance. But then I'd remember the lies, the deception, how easy it had been for her to live that double life for 6 months, and I knew I could never have trusted her again. The divorce was finalized in August, almost exactly 6 months after I discovered the affair. We sold the house, divided the money, signed all the papers. It was the official closure of that chapter of my life. Katherine called me from an unknown number a few days after everything was finalized, asking if we could talk about some details of the house sale. I told her everything had to be handled through the lawyers, that there was no reason for us to talk directly. She insisted a bit, saying she just wanted, I don't know. I think she wanted to apologize again, or get some kind of closure, but I didn't need that anymore. I told her I wished her the best in her life and hung up. Now I'm living in a new apartment. Smaller than the house, but it's mine. It's my space. I went back to traveling for work without feeling that constant guilt of leaving someone behind. Things aren't perfect. I still have days where I feel bitter about everything that happened. Where I see all this as a chapter that closed so I could start a new one. Last week, a coworker invited me to a barbecue at his house. I met some new people. I laughed more than I'd laughed in months. And when I was driving back to my apartment that night, I realized I was okay. That I was going to be okay. That all this would eventually just be an awkward story to tell when someone asks me why I got divorced. That's enough for now, I guess.